else is on. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good.
Hey.
Hey.
The microphone in about 2 years.
Yeah. Lord, can you hear us now?
Yes, I can.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, great. Okay.
Okay, it's 4 o'clock. Ms. Thomas, we ready or you? The November 18th, 2024 Charlottesville City Council meeting will come to order. Ms. Thomas, will you please call the roll?
Councilor Oshrin,
Here.
Councilor Payne,
Here.
Vice Mayor Pinkston.
Here.
We have a request from Councilor Snook to participate electronically. Mayor Wade,
Here.
okay. Having established a physical quorum, council will consider a request from Councilor Snook made earlier today to participate electronically pursuant to council's adopted procedures in compliance with the Virginia Freedom of Information Statute for meeting participation through electronic communication means. Councilor Snook, are you able to hear us?
Yes, I am.
Are participants in the room able to hear Councilor Snook?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Councilor Snook, you noted in your request that you need to participate remotely because of a temporary medical condition. For the record, could you please specify your remote location?
I'm at home at 2408 Hillwood Place in the city.
Thank you. Based on compliance with the policy, is there a motion regarding electronic participation?
I move for approval of Councilor Snook participating in our meeting remotely. Second.
Okay. Do we vote on this?
Yes,
Okay.
go ahead.
Can we vote? Okay, Lord, you got approved for
Thank
4-0.
you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Let's see, where are we now? Is there a motion to approve or amend the agenda?
So moved.
Okay. Can we-
Second.
Second. Can we vote, please?
And put me down as an aye.
Okay.
Got it.
The motion passes 5-0. This meeting will be divided into 3 sections. The first one is a work section to hear and discuss presentations that do not require a council vote, followed by a closed session. Then city council business meeting will begin at 6:30. Today we will be hearing a budget briefing on organizational excellence and equity, and City Manager Sanders will present.
All right, so have a PowerPoint coming up. There we go. So good evening, counselors and members of the public. This is the first of a three-part series that I'm referring to as budget briefs. Basically want to help bring a little transparency and bring counselors into the budget making process just a little bit differently than we have in the past. Accepting fully that my responsibility is to bring before you and to propose to you a balanced budget in early March, which is by code my number one obligation. I will be doing that, and it will be balanced, as hard as it may be and feel right now. The goal is just to make sure that we give some consideration of what the various things are that are contributing to what makes it difficult and or not so difficult. But basically, just want to highlight for you all that a budget brief is to share the trends that impact the budget. We want to highlight some of the fiscal demands that we may be facing as an organization, how we're wrestling with those. We always look for what are the fiscal drivers, and we try to highlight those. So in the message that I write as a part of the budget presentation and as a part of my presenting it, I'll always speak to what the drivers are, the things that are causing things to be different, and then to confirm priorities are captured in the budget presentation. For me, these are moments where I get to hear back from you. I'm looking for more than a head nod. Sometimes I'm looking for a question. I'm looking for confirmation that, yes, those things make sense to me, because my goal is to make sure that the budget that I bring to you is reflective of your priorities. So again, as I said, it's a three-part series. This first session tonight, this evening, is on organizational excellence and equity, taking two of your strategic outcome areas and framing them for this section. We will talk about housing and infrastructure in the next meeting, and public safety and transportation at the second meeting in December. And then I just wanted to break down a little bit of the process. The first column there, budget submissions and meetings, that's where we are right now. All budget requests are in, so we've received budgets from all departments and offices, and budget meetings have begun. So we're in the process of meeting with each team to have them allow each of them an opportunity to share with us what are the mechanics of their budget, the makeup of their budget in the way of changes, what variances they may be experiencing. They talk to us about their current vacancies, any new requests that they may have, and then the goal is for us as a budget team to interact with them to make sure that we are questioning some of the choices and decisions that they might be making in a positive way, really making sure that they have looked as closely as they can at their budgets and made sure that they are as streamlined as possible, because of course, as we are one of those places that wants to continue to punch above its weight class, I need money to do that, so I may have to find that in other ways, and part of the process is just to test some of those things. We're always looking to link the budget to the strategic outcome areas, so for me it's important that because you adopted this strategic outcome area as a framework for your strategic plan, we are responsible for implementing that plan. We should be able to demonstrate for you in the budget how we are associating the expenditures of the local government in those areas. We'll be presenting the CIP to the Planning Commission on November 26th, and then the public hearing will be December 10th. That's going to be an opportunity for anyone that is interested in understanding how we are producing our capital planning efforts, what that looks like, and the goal will be for them to be able to weigh in. That's why we have the public hearing. And we won't finalize anything in regards to the CIP and the overall budget, of course, until I bring to you the proposed budget. That is when it's done.
Mr. Sanders, the public hearing on December 10th, what's the venue for that?
I believe that's here. It'll be here in council chambers.
Because it's just the planning.
It's the planning commission meeting. It's their meeting, and that'll be on their agenda. Sorry.
At 5:30.
At 5:30, yes. And then a budget preview is a special meeting that's been added through conversation between myself and the superintendent. We added December 19th as a joint session of council and the school board. This is a conversation for schools to help us understand what their particular drivers may be early. This gives us a peek into what their ask is ultimately going to be, and then it gives us a chance as a budget team to begin assembling around that notion, along with all the other things that we have learned over the course of the budget meetings. And then we'll also be working to confirm revenue projections all along that time period as well, to see what we can afford to pay for. The next column is making the decisions. Those are the things that we will desperately move into. I said desperately. I will quickly move into in the first part of the year, desperately trying to get through all those things ahead of producing that proposed budget for you all that is balanced. So we'll be finalizing the CIP. We'll review any remaining new requests and make some decisions on whether or not we can make those fit. Evaluating vacancies is something that I did a part of this current year's budget and will again do as a part of next year's budget. Setting grant caps, because that is an opportunity for us to say that what we are putting out in the way of supporting organizations as a dollar amount may be sufficient. It may be that we move things around, or we may not necessarily be able to just add money for the sake of adding it. But we'll also be looking for funding gaps as well. So I will be having the City Manager's Community Budget Forum on the 12th of December. That'll be a chance for the public to come and talk to me and the team about things that they would like to see discussed and or considered for the budget. That is December 12th at Carver, and I believe it's at 6 p.m. We'll confirm that as we get closer. And then I'll be proposing the balanced budget on March 4th. So I'm going to break this down into categories. So under organizational excellence, there are these two areas. Collective bargaining is one of the big areas, and then operational systems increases. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on each one of those, but just pointing out to you that we're looking at a $5 million increase plus or minus that amount for integrating collective bargaining, and that is existing contracts, which there are 3, and the new contract that we'll be adding. The 3 existing contracts being police, fire, and transit. And the new contract is made up of a combination of Parks and Rec, Public Works, and Utilities. And there are a couple of similarly situated positions in Police and Fire that make up that team, all represented by the Teamsters. So we'll be working, we're already negotiating with Teamsters, and our goal would be to bring, for them to bring forward to me a contract that can be signed, establishing a 4th union in the city government. When we look at cost increases, I'm sharing this information for you because these are the costs of doing business. These are things that we really don't have a lot of space to play with what we can and cannot do, but we always take a good hard look. Health insurance costs are going up. We are a self-insured program, so we have to look at what the management of those costs are and make sure that we are funding appropriately for what those things could end up being based on who's our employee work group and how they're using healthcare. Risk management, so workman's compensation and legal defense are areas that are also increasing in this new budget cycle. As we've met with our risk manager recently, he indicated that there were some additional cost projections that are just being issued across the board. So those are service increases that we're going to have to absorb. And then the management of collective bargaining. We did not, I think we added 1, maybe 2 positions initially. We're beginning to see additional needs. Having just met with our HR team earlier today to confirm that I was reading it correctly, we are needing to integrate the labor relations administrator and legal representative, which are funded categories that we have already taken care of in this past year and current year through a one-time allocation that was set aside by council. This is now recognizing these as ongoing expenditures that we are not going to be able to not make fit into the budget. So these are additional expenses that will become a part of the annual budget. HR staff support and then financial analysis services are what it takes to be able to integrate each of these new contracts and understanding what the costs of those are so that we can predict that in advance of being able to determine what we can agree to at the negotiating table.
Mr. Sanders, could I ask you to go back 1 page in your presentation?
Yes.
When we talk about collective bargaining, actually maybe another page as well, when we talk about collective bargaining as being potentially as much as a $5 million increase, I think it is really important to emphasize that what we are doing here we would need to do a large portion of this regardless of whether there was a union involved. In other words, that this is involving getting to competitive ranges all of our salaries, which we had not done in decades, literally. And this is stage 2 of what we had started last year. But the idea is that we will get our people being paid what is a competitive wage to keep them from going someplace else. The important thing is we're investing in our people. We're not investing in a union, we're investing in our people.
That is correct. And I think that's a very good point that you make there. And just to say that again, slightly different, is that we would be incurring an increase in compensation on an annual basis pretty much as a given, because we're always looking at cost of living adjustments, although there have been occasions where we may find ourselves on hard times and say that we can't afford to do that, and we just keep compensation flat. But for the most part, we're always going to be considering an increase, and in this moment, these are negotiated changes. That's the difference, is that we would, if we did not have collective bargaining, there would still be a number there that wouldn't be labeled collective bargaining, and it would probably be labeled compensation increase, where I would be projecting to you how we would adjust the base compensation for all employees at the start of the new fiscal year.
And it would probably be pretty close to the same amount.
Probably safe to say, in some instances, maybe, but yeah, we would imagine that we would be looking at roughly the same numbers or close to, in that we've got to keep up with the market, and that is part of our challenge. We have to stay up with what's happening around us, and then what goes on and what it costs to live here as well. Those are factors that have to be appreciated as we determine who can come to work in Charlottesville and actually live and thrive.
Thank you.
So additional, under contracted services, there's some additional increases to some of the contracts that we currently have in place, but also wanted to point out to you a series of new service contracts that are getting at a lot of the things that you all have been talking about, that we as staff have brought forward as consideration, and in other larger conversations that have been occurring in the region. We're looking at establishing a contract for short-term rental management of information. This is something that's been kind of batted around a bit. But our Commissioner of Revenue and NDS Director and Zoning Administrator have been working on this for the past few months and have agreed that now is the right time for us to bring a software program in. And I think it's important for us, and I've talked to Deputy Freeze about it as well, it makes sense for us to do as an interim step, get this system in place and help us track what we have in the way of activity, see what this software can do to help us in the management of that. And then as we come back to you at some point in the future as a part of the work plan for NDS, work to addressing what might be a policy concern or changes to our existing program. This is the beginning of that process, is how I'd like to frame it.
So this is a software program that basically combs the internet and puts all of that data into.
I don't know that it combs the internet. What I'm going to say from the conversation that I had with the commissioner is that this is a chance for us to feed information. So I'm not exactly sure how he would feed it. It could be through who's applying, and we plug that information in, and then we can track it in a better way than we're probably doing it today. But it also has an interface to allow us to communicate and possibly even collect payments, is what he described. We're not sure we're going with a full deployment day one, but this is just the beginning of a process from managing what information has been a little hard to keep up with.
So most likely it's tracking the people who have submitted.
Yes.
It's not looking at Airbnb and figuring out, oh, these people are just operating one without city knowledge.
It's probably possible. I don't know that we know that for sure, but I think the goal would be that we would want to make sure that we can find information for people who haven't even applied as well. I think the goal is, from a policy standpoint, we've got to be able to get our arms around that too.
Yeah.
That people aren't just doing it and not telling us about it. If we can figure that out, we find that information, we would be able to add it into the system just the same.
Okay.
So this is a step into that direction of figuring out what the policy fix could ultimately be down the road. This is something we've talked about a little bit, and we've agreed that we're going to try to see if we can't make it fit into the budget. Community development and housing programs, there's a program called Neighborly. We spent some time evaluating it. It is now going live within our Office of Community Solutions. It will be a repository for all of our housing grants and various relationships that we have. It gives us a better reporting and tracking mechanism, and we hope to then be able to generate reporting from that. Housing analysis is a request that's also been made for us to be able to look at how we can work with developers who are expressing various concerns about the zoning ordinance and needing to figure out what is feasible, what is not. It gives us a chance to analyze what is the right investment for us to make into a project that is being brought to us. I think what we would hope to do is to look at what's needed to help us augment what the staff is not skilled at doing because they just don't have that background. But we have the ability to bring in that service through a vendor relationship to help us figure some things out. In the regional category, there's been conversations that we've had with the county about a need for a homelessness assessment for the region. That's something that we could split the cost on. The Continuum of Care, which is led by BRAC, the Blue Ridge area. I almost went back to my old place of living. The Blue Ridge Area Coalition on Homelessness has a need for strategic planning so they can figure out what more needs to be done in the way of an update in that space. You all, in your joint meeting with the county, had conversation about a regional community visioning effort using the Virginia Tech model that we could potentially have the city, county, and university at the table working together. That work is still going on by myself and my counterpart, Jeff Richardson, so we hope to be able to push that conversation forward some more. And then CARTA is our regional transportation planning conversation that we've also had with those same parties and others, including TJPDC. So what I would hope to be able to do is to figure out a way to afford all of the things that are under this new service contract area, because this is the work. This is what you all have prioritized in your strategic outcomes. What I'm showing you is that the cost of getting some of the analytical services done is a driver right now, because in volume, it's new money that we're going to have to fund.
Sam,
Yes.
over here. Sorry, I can
Oh,
follow up on
I know.
Yes, go ahead.
just following up on the question that Councilor Oshrin asked. Yes, it does comb the internet
Okay.
to find illegal listings or non-permitted listings.
Okay, thank you.
I assume that that Todd specifically wanted to
Yeah.
be able to do that, but I did not want to commit if it was not so.
Okay, great, yeah.
But he did talk about there are additional features in the system that we should be able to turn on, but we weren't going global just yet.
Okay.
So that's great. All right, and then under the equity category, just pointing out for you all, homeless services, referencing plus or minus $1 million, and that goes back to the previous conversation that I had with you all on October 21st that I labeled community intervention, so I'll remind you of that momentarily. The social equity category is mostly of our human needs and services, so I'll point out some of those things, and then our compliance with ADA. So for homeless services, you all recall that I shared with you that the recommendation that I was making was that we replace revenue to the Salvation Army for them taking the Cherry Avenue thrift store offline from being a thrift store that generates revenue to the organization, and that the city offer a replacement of that for the next 5 years within our CIP at $200,000 a year. Also recommended to you all that we consider increasing the operating capacity for BRAC by committing $250,000 in our fundamental category. So that would be an annual grant that would be made to them, and that is outside of the competitive nature of some of our grant work. And then also a commitment of $500,000 for a low barrier shelter to support its operations, that too outside of the competitive process and making it a part of our fundamental structure. And the goal would be to identify still who would be the recipient of those funds, and that is still being discussed. So that's the plus or minus 750.
Is that low barrier shelter amount intended as a one-time capital contribution, or is it intended as an annual thing that we're signing up for?
These amounts are the recurring amounts. The one-time amounts that I also referenced in that particular conversation are tied to ARP and/or year-end surplus requests that you'll be getting in the coming weeks.
Okay.
But these are all recurring. So these items that you see on the screen right now would be a part of the permanent budget.
So, Sam,
Gotcha.
I'm sorry, Lloyd, will you finish?
Yeah, I just said gotcha.
Okay. So I thought we were going to be working with some community partners to see, if we can find some space along some, temporarily abandoned, or empty, I shouldn't say abandoned, storefronts, I don't know, along 29 quarter, 250, where, is that still out there?
For what purpose were you thinking?
The store.
Oh, well, at one point you might be referencing something where we were just having the conversation about needing a low barrier shelter. the search for a place to do that really was taken off the table when the Salvation Army pitched the idea of using the Cherry Avenue site. It has actually become the best location for that particular purpose.
Right, no, I understand that, but I thought for the store itself.
Oh, no, the store itself, I mean, that would be up to them. If they were to come back with, we would like to be able to move it somewhere else, they knew that taking it offline would make sense if this was going to be its use, because it wasn't going to be a temporary use, it'd be permanent. I think they're considering whether or not they're going to do away with the store. That's why they asked for the 5 years transition.
And so we, just as a recap, we capped that at 5 years.
Correct. It's-
Or if they start the store up again
Then we
before
would
those
not have
5
to.
years, we
Correct.
stop the contribution.
So that, I would say that part of the conversation is still up for discussion. We have not revisited that to shorten that or anything like that, but I think that's something that we could continue to talk to them about. Okay, next up was social equity. So in this space, again, this is taking a look at our human services area specifically, because this is the touching of human beings, human needs being met. The Pathways Fund is our annual operating fund of providing direct support to individuals that are having some sort of difficulty in maintaining their household finances. We're able to put money into this. At this moment, you all had allocated $1 million to go into this space to be distributed as individuals call for assistance. We have identified $215,000 that we can shift over as a part of ARP, and that would come to you as the future request that is coming by the end of this year. But I'm pointing out to you that in this moment, one of the things that stood out to us in the conversation that we had with the Human Services team is that $1 million allocation, about a third of that is being absorbed by staff. That's what it takes to provide this resource to the public. And what we have found is that we have been unable to meet the schedule the preset schedule. We're actually having to advance funds earlier. We're still seeing people in need of resources to help them. So we're sending payment 2 earlier than we had scheduled, and payment 3 is now being processed to be sent earlier than that was scheduled, which is the basis for shifting this $215,000 over from ARP to be able to get through the end of the year. The main point that I'm making to you is that in this moment, I am looking for you to indicate to me that you want to continue to support the Pathways Fund for as much as we possibly can up at that $1 million level, so that we get the note to prioritize that as we're making a decision on what can and cannot fit. But I'm just pointing out that that's one of the discoveries that we're seeing right now, is that people are still struggling to be able to make ends meet. We also had a conversation with them about adding $60,000 to their budget for emergency hotel for families. These are individuals experiencing homelessness or very close to, so they may be in jeopardy of becoming homeless. So this would be an intervention that try to get them stabilized quickly. Also, there's a need for a new vehicle to support the foster care program in support of their moving young people around, even for fun excursions and things like that. We probably have them driving a vehicle today that we should not have them driving. So I made that a priority to put on the list. And then there's a need for additional funding and staff for the KYIP program, because again, in response to the community requests and council's request that we find more opportunities for young people in the summer, we're expanding the number of kids that we can serve in KYIP. And with that comes a need for the money to pay them, of course, and then a need for an additional staff person to support the increased activities. So these are all things that we are working right now to try to figure out how to make fit into this budget.
Could I ask how we come up with $60,000 as the relevant figure for the emergency hotel for families?
That's the number that they have budgeted, I think, on more than one occasion, more than 1 year, and they target a certain number of hotel nights and then try to associate that with the volume of activity that they've experienced as a trend over the prior years.
And who's the they?
That's our human services team.
Okay.
Out of curiosity, you said about a third of Pathways funding is going to staffing.
Mm-hmm.
Is that from hiring additional positions to field phone calls,
Yeah,
or is that?
it's to directly work with those individuals, right? So a third of that is a part of the cost allocation is going towards staffing. So that's part of I didn't know that. I don't think I realized that early on, but I wasn't a part of that conversation that deeply. But my point in pointing this out here is that if we're getting increased calls and accelerating our payments, then the fact that we're spending that much on staff is that much less than we have available for folks that are still experiencing difficulties.
And explain the acceleration of payments.
We preset on a quarterly basis when we're going to cut a check. So we're finding that they're running out of money before that period has ended. So we're just saying, all right, we'll give you payment to earlier. So that is showing that we're going to be out of money before the year is up. That's what we're concerned about.
And did you have any follow-up?
I can. One of the reasons why we're finding that we are increasing that is as the city manager said, because of the need. What we don't want to do with your direct human services team is to tell anybody, I'm so sorry, we're out of money for this quarter, good luck. What we've found is that in our community, both the Pathways Fund and the emergency hotel stays for families for the city of Charlottesville are unduplicated. So we are not stepping on the toes of any of our nonprofit partners, but that also means we don't have a nonprofit partner that could pick up to help a family or to help an individual who's finding themselves housing insecure if we don't have that money. So that's one of the reasons why this is the second time this year we've asked to front the money earlier. So that we are not leaving a community member in a gap. But what that does mean is that more of our community members are in need. That is even with us putting some limitations on the funding to allow it to stretch as far as it can. And so I really appreciate the city manager bringing that up because, again, we're going to do everything we can to provide that assistance. But both hotels and leasing agencies like to be compensated. And so we are really finding that to be a bit of a struggle. But with that staffing as well, the individuals in human services don't just take a call and cut a check. They're making those hot and warm handoffs to help stabilize that person or that family, as well as sometimes if we're thinking the emergency hotel stays for families, helping with that housing navigation to help them find a permanent place as well. So that's also part of those staffing costs.
Thank you.
And I would say that that last note that Ashley's made there would indicate that, and we're looking for certain individuals with certain skill sets to be able to handle what can get complicated even at times. So. All right, next is then our compliance with the ADA, continuing what I have personally been working on for the entire time that I've been here. Is making sure that we become more compliant as it relates to our honoring and respecting that the ADA is law and that we don't have a choice. So what we're looking to do is to work towards implementation of our new ADA transition plan, which we are expecting at the end of the year. We received some preliminary recommendations from our consultant who's been working feverishly to get this done. I've listed for you what that initial recommendation is, and we pulled out the specific dollar amounts that they have identified for us as they have prioritized the comprehensive list that they've been able to build in the right-of-way space. There are still additional areas of analysis that we will get information on that are not going to be funded by these allocations that we may have to consider. But I'm just pointing out to you that this is the beginning of the work, and what we did to appreciate that is I have asked our budget director to add a $2 million line item in the CIP for each of the next 5 years to demonstrate our commitment to a culture of compliance around ADA. I would hope that that means that people would see that we are really prioritizing this matter because we have not done this before. There is some monies in the CIP, 3 small accounts that have been able to accumulate funds. This is in addition to. This is demonstrating that this is the money for work to get done, and we'll continue to prioritize and get this done. And the goal, again, is to continue to demonstrate best effort. We know that this is an old city. That's a good thing in many ways, and it's a complicated, challenging thing in other ways. And that means some of our infrastructure, as it's been built and has been in existence, is not really conducive to a number of conditions that people face when they're trying to move around, and we have to continue to work on that. And the ADA is why we have to. So we'll continue to work in this space. But I just wanted to point out to you that this is not just one single entry. This is over the next 5 years. That is the commitment. Yes.
Thank you. What is barrier remediation?
So this is, the example that they showed in the park space is when the sidewalk, when one panel of the sidewalk raises over time, like a tree might push it up, and then the other one is lower, it's a trip hazard and it's a fall hazard in the other direction. So that's a lot of what these are, is removing barriers. If there is a mailbox that is in the sidewalk, in the right-of-way, which we have allowed those to happen. Yeah, I know that one specifically. And if there are other things that are not jet, I mean, utility poles are the consistent thing, but other things that are in the travel lane that is the sidewalk, is removing those things to get them out of the way so that you can pass safely.
Okay, thanks. I wasn't sure if it was something like that, or like there's a fence that needs
And
fixing.
I would say,
That was a barrier.
I know of some
Yeah.
situations where there's encroachment from fences and things like that, so it would be addressing those things too.
And just to clarify, it says annual commitment there, but just to clarify, that's $2 million per year.
Per year for the
5
next 5 years.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that was to demonstrate that we know that the ADA transition plan is going to have a very huge price tag attached to it. And again, as I have pushed and stated clearly to staff that I'm operating of the mindset, demonstrate best effort. That means that the city should be able to show that we're doing the best that we possibly can with working this backlog that is a list of things that we know are deficiencies. And the best way to demonstrate that would be to show it in our commitment, and our CIP is our commitment. It's what are we going to do in the next 5 years? And then we'll go from there as we learn more and additional resources may come available as we finish other things.
I know this is it's like a 35-year-old law, but is there any federal government grants that we can still apply for ADA stuff, or was that all expired by the mid-90s?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that there are grants specifically for ADA, because part of what the government did was they told us they wanted us to do better, and they've given us time, all communities, to do better, and now they're saying time is up. So what they have been doing is they have been going into communities, and the DOJ is who comes, and they go through a process, and you end with a settlement, and then there's a forced plan that they put on the community. So what could happen if this were not the approach that we're taking, and I am guarding against the worst case scenario, that if we did nothing and just continued kind of what we were doing and said, well, it's all that we could afford, the result could be that the DOJ could come and they could tell us that we have to put more than $2 million a year in our CIP and commit to getting it done in a shorter period than what is probably going to be 15, 20 years for the list that we're going to receive. That's what they have done in other communities and make it even harder for you to do it. So I'm not aware of any specific grants in that space, except our smart scale opportunities, our VDOT opportunities have ADA components within them. So that's probably one way that we should always think about. If we can keep our VDOT portfolio working well, which is another project that I've been committed to and others are working on, we will always get some progress made in that space. But this is really about going back and fixing a lot of what we have, over time, just been
Neglected.
conditions.
Yeah. Okay, so this is it's both good because we're making progress
Right.
and it demonstrates a good faith effort
Yes,
towards that
absolutely,
progress.
absolutely.
Thank you.
So you're going to have Budget Brief 2, which is Housing and Infrastructure, December 2nd. This is going to be a lot of different things. A lot of the housing stuff, one of the key things I'll highlight for you, what we hope to do is just to be able to clearly visualize, help you visualize what we've been doing and what our commitment is in the new CIP that we're proposing, how we're hitting our affordable housing goal and exceeding that goal, and to what degree we're anticipating that, so that you can see that, along with other infrastructure priorities that we have. So all of this is framed by the idea that I'm here with the staff to implement your vision to be a place where everyone thrives. So that is the brief as I presented it for you. So I'm happy to take any questions that you may have for anything that we didn't touch on.
So, based on your presentation and what you know, what's going to keep you up at night between now and March?
Chrissy's waiting. It is my desire that I can bring to you a balanced budget that does not rely on a tax increase. That's what I'd like to be able to do. I am not confident that I'll be able to do that, but I would like to make sure that this team, and the team has indicated in their budget meetings, they've heard from me repeatedly, that we are looking at everything. So we are looking at their individual budgets and questioning and asking different questions than we have in the past. Not because we don't trust and believe in their abilities to do what they need to do, but just making sure that we are as solid and as sound and as streamlined as we can be. And where we can find dollars to put here to take care of this versus allowing it to sit, I would like to have a lower surplus, and I would like to have a budget that I can bring to you that does not require a tax increase. I believe our public has made it clear that it is becoming more and more difficult for them if that is how we continue. So I'd like to at least deliver a chance for me to say, this is what I think we can do, checking as many of the boxes as you all have laid out for me in the form of your strategic outcome areas, and then leave it to you, of course, to make a decision that would include it if you were to go that route. So the reason I stay up night trying to figure it out is how do we get this math to work and get all those things in there.
So if my understanding is that the $5 million for collective bargaining includes the 3 that were approved last year and the 3 that's currently being.
The one that's under consideration now.
The one, okay.
Right.
So
3 plus 1.
yeah. Where do we stand with the schools? Do you know?
So that is another thing that I did not highlight. It's a good question for you to bring that up, because we anticipate that the school's increase, while it was challenged for this year's budget, is going to still be challenged for next year's budget because they didn't get everything they asked for. And I think most of us agree that what they were asking for, a lot of it was clear. Like, no question that it made sense of why they might be asking for it. Now this year, they're going to add collective bargaining on top of that. So they're going to be looking for the local government to be able to help offset some of that impact. And at this moment, we're not 100% sure what to anticipate, which is part of the reason for me having the conversation with the superintendent about adding that special session next month, so that they can share with us what are they thinking, what are they looking at internally, so that we then have the benefit of a few weeks with that information, with all the other things that we're currently chewing on right now.
I appreciate it. Thank you for the presentation and for getting us sort of set as we leave the fall and start the winter.
Yeah.
Could I ask one question, Mr. Sanders?
Yes.
Do we know what the school system's calendar is for their own negotiations? Are they going to, come up, when we talk in December, are they going to already have things decided as far as what their contract is going to be, or is this still going to be in the negotiation phase with them and therefore with us?
We can find that out for sure. We don't know if they will have settled by the time of that meeting. If I'm remembering correctly, though, I do think that the superintendent was indicating to me that they have to know by the end of December, because he has to make his initial budget presentation to the school board at the end of January, or at some point towards the end of January, because they do their series of conversations before they present to you directly. So I would imagine from a timeline perspective of what it's going to take, he'd have to know by the end of the year some number to plug into the budget.
Okay, thank you.
Hopefully we can get it by the 19th. If not, we can get some indication of a ballpark, I would hope.
I mean, one of the challenges we had last year was trying to get from them. I mean, they came at us originally with saying, hey, we need $9 million more. And then we said, well, we can't do 9. How about, let's talk about a smaller number. And then they came back and said 5. And all of this was still subject to their own negotiations of some things. And it got to be really kind of difficult for us to try to figure out what our real target was. So the more information that they've got, and of course they want more information from us so that they know how to set their own targets. I understand that it's a dance, but the more information we can get earlier, the better.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's really what that conversation was about. So I think the December meeting should be helpful to you as well as to the budget team, because we should hear, it'll be more than collective bargaining. I'm sure they'll be ready to talk to us about whatever did not make it on the budget list for this year that is still a hot burning issue, they'll be able to highlight that for us. And I think that is what I'm looking for, being able to appreciate what some of that may be so that we can start to determine what kind of pool of funds might be available there. And of course, it's all based on what the revenues come back at. We got our revenue projections will determine what those numbers can go up to.
Thank you.
Small thing.
Yeah.
The budget, or what you presented to us, shows the vehicle for CAF programming was $60,000. What kind of vehicle? Is
A van,
Okay.
it
So
would
like
be
a-
a family.
a big, like what, a church van?
It wasn't a 15 passenger, right? It was a regular family size thing?
No, their preference
Little
is
larger.
to move to actually a smaller van that's a little more maneuverable, but it is to ensure that some of our teens who don't have appropriate transportation can get to and from, and sometimes the internship locations are not necessarily where we would love for them to be, for them to utilize our public transit, so.
So probably a smaller, bigger than a family van, but maybe like a 10 passenger van or something like that. Not
Okay.
15, because I remember them saying something about wheeling a 15 passenger van
Those
was
are
tough.
big and,
Yeah.
okay. I was wondering if it had like special, like wheelchair capabilities,
No.
or I don't know.
No, I wouldn't imagine so.
Lot for-
We're hoping, we're even looking to see if there is a internal opportunity to supply them with the van if we can. But if not, then that was the ask that they were making. So it's just trying to be able to prioritize that.
Okay.
I guess in terms of feedback, it sounded like you were asking for feedback from council either now or at a later date on specifically the Pathways Fund. I would definitely say for me, I think that continues to be an important priority to keep funded. I've definitely heard from people who work in eviction diversion that our Pathways Fund is higher in absolute dollars than any of our surrounding localities, obviously on a per capita basis, even higher than that. And what they've found is that Charlottesville's eviction rates, as well as the amount of evictions leading to homelessness, are substantially larger in all our surrounding localities than in Charlottesville. Not that everything's perfect in Charlottesville, but it's substantially worse in our surrounding localities, and they think that our Pathways funding is really the critical, decisive factor in the number of evictions and outcomes of our evictions being very different than the rest of the region.
I think that's one of the positive outcomes of being able to work on things like this. But we know it's expensive. Anything else?
Any other comments? As usual, it's going to be a very challenging budget process, but that's why they elected us and paying us the big bucks. So we're looking forward to that discussion.
And I'll bring you a balanced budget because I have to.
Oh, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, are you presenting anything, Christy?
No.
Okay.
She was my backup.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
In case you needed something.
Okay. I think now we're going into closed session.
Yes.
I have a motion here for that. Pursuant to Section 2.2-3712 of the Virginia Code, I move that the City Council close this open meeting and convene in the closed session as authorized by the Virginia Freedom of Information Act as follows. 1, under Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A1, for discussion and consideration of the appointment, performance, and salary of a specific named appointee of the public body. And 2, under Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A1, for discussion and consideration of prospective candidates to be appointed to the following boards and/or committees: the Affordable Housing Fund Committee, the Board of Architectural Review, the Building Code Board of Appeals, Community Development Task Force, Convention and Visitors Bureau Board, Criminal Justice Board, Charlottesville-Albemarle Airport Commission, Housing Advisory Committee, Minority Business Commission, Retirement Commission, River Basin Commission, Sister Cities Commission, Social Services Board, Solid Waste Authority, Towing Advisory Board, Vendor Appeals Board, Water and Sewer Authority, YMCA Board, and the Youth Council.
Second?
Can we vote, please?
putting me down as an aye.
Okay. Okay, we're in closed session now. We will return at 6:30. And there'll be, we'll have a separate link for that, yes. Thank you. We'll be back in about an hour and a half.